Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the war horror films from 1985, titled Come and See. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The movie opens during the Second World War in Belarus, an elderly man trying to warn the kids about digging up guns on what used to be a battlefield, because it could arouse the suspicions of the occupying Germans. However, the boys ignore him. They hope that by finding some guns, they might be able to join the Soviet partisan forces, who are trying their best to liberate their country from the Nazis. The boys' hard work soon pays off as one of the boys, Floria, discovers a rifle in the sand. But before they can dig further, a German aircraft flies over them, causing them to become scared, while the German soldiers see Floria with the rifle. Later, at home, we see that Floria lives with his mother and two younger sisters. His mother is devastated in finding out that her son wants to participate in the war. Floria explains that he wants to join the partisans because neighbors of his age have already gone to war. Hearing this, the mother hysterically takes out an axe, and claims that if he truly wants to leave, he must first kill her and his two sisters. Not long after, two Soviet soldiers arrive at the house, and Floria's mother welcomes them. But when she finds out that they have come to take her son, she becomes scared. Floria, on the other hand, is pretty excited by their arrival. He happily shows them the rifle he found earlier. After a brief chit-chat, the soldiers drag Floria outside the house. His mother pleads with them to spare her son, but to no avail. The soldiers are actually dressed as Nazis, and they pretend to beat Floria in front of the villagers, as they don't want to arouse suspicion among the real Nazis. Floria is shoved onto a cart, and before heading off, he gives one last look at his devastated mother and sisters. A while later, they arrive at the partisan camp deep in the forest. As Floria explores the area, he becomes thrilled to become a low-rank militiaman, and notices the soldiers having a goofy photo session. Being a young recruit, he gets invited to join a photo opportunity to showcase their unity against the German invasion. That evening, a superior assigns him to the duty of camp surveillance, and instructs that he should only admit those who know the passwords. The partisan commander named Kosak orders him to shoot anyone who does not recite the password. The following morning, Floria is ordered to clean a large frying pot. He feels jealous seeing the other men fawning over a girl named Glasha, and learns that she is the camp nurse. Floria is also captivated by her beauty, so he keeps staring at her, while she scatters the frying pot with a clump of baby's breath. After some time, the chief gathers everyone, and declares that it's time to take down the Nazis and their atrocities. He announces that they must now leave for the battlefield and fight for their country. At this moment, Glasha arrives and looks at Kosak with affection, but he ignores her and focuses on the speech, causing her to leave. After the briefing, Kosak asks if anyone is unable to march. One person steps forward, explaining that his torn boots prevent him from marching, so Kosak orders him to swap boots with Floria since he is a rookie and still a kid. Floria reluctantly gives up his boots, and is upset that he won't be able to join the battlefield. Not long after, the soldiers begin to march away, leaving only Floria and the women of the camp behind. Disappointed, he walks through the forest, crying like a child. Moments later, he realizes he's not alone as he hears a girl crying in the distance. It turns out to be Glasha, who is also upset about being left behind. The two stare at each other while crying loudly. But seconds later, their expressions suddenly change, and they begin laughing at their misfortune. They then introduce themselves and happily chat with each other. Glasha tells him that he's an idiot and a coward, and that's why he was left behind. She thinks Kosak took pity on him, but he refuses to believe this. Suddenly, they notice some German aircrafts flying in the air. The area is then bombarded by air raids, with several big explosions taking place. Due to this incident, Floria's ear begins bleeding, and he becomes partially deaf. A German paratrooper arrives to attack them, but he gets stuck in a tree. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the teenagers quickly run deep into the forest. They hide in a secure location, while the German soldiers keep firing all over the place. Turns out the Nazis are eradicating all the resistance forces in the area. Later, Floria constructs a makeshift shelter with big leaves, and they decide to spend the night there. Both of them are shivering from the cold, and Floria tells her that they will go to his home tomorrow, where he'll introduce her to his mother and two sisters. The next morning, as it begins to rain, the duo becomes excited and starts dancing wildly. Afterward, they head towards Floria's village, and we see that his feet are badly injured. When they finally arrive at the village, they find it strangely quiet. Floria then rushes to his house to meet his mother and sisters, but they are nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Glosha notices that the house is filled with flies all over the place. She quickly realizes that everyone is dead here, but Floria insists that his family might have gone out and will be back soon. After a while, Floria notices the scattered toys of his sisters on the floor. This makes him suspect that his family has gone to hide on a small island surrounded by bogs. As they run to find this place, Glosha looks over her shoulder and sees a horrific sight. Several dozen bodies are piled up against a barn. She screams in terror, but Floria doesn't hear and continues moving forward. While running away, they encounter muddy bog land, and without hesitation, they hurriedly wade through the mud swamp to reach the other side. After crossing over, Glosha reveals that Floria's family is already dead, and their bodies are piled up in the barn, but the boy doesn't want to listen. He gets so angry that he attacks Glosha. He throws her into the mud swamp, but he realizes his mistake and jumps in to help her. Just then, a partisan soldier named Roubaix shows up, and immediately helps Glosha in getting out of the mud and calms her down. Here she claims that Floria is a crazy guy. She explains that his family is gone, but he refuses to believe this. Hearing this, Roubaix sympathizes with both the teenagers, and takes them to a large group of other villagers who have fled from the Nazis. Among the villagers, Floria notices the elderly man from the opening scene, who is fully burnt and on the verge of death. He tells Floria that he witnessed the execution of his mother and sisters. He explains how the Nazis burnt him, and even when he pleaded for death, they simply laughed and continued to torture him. The man tells Floria that he had warned him not to dig for weapons, and now because of his actions, they all are suffering. Hearing this, Floria feels intense guilt and has a mental breakdown. He tries to end his life by burying his face in the mud, but Glosha and the villagers stop him and calm him down. Afterwards, the villagers create a scarecrow of Hitler, and proceed to spit on it and curse it for the suffering he has caused them. Sometime later, Roubaix and his men ask Floria to come with them to scavenge for some food at a nearby warehouse. After walking for a while, Floria and his group find that the warehouse is guarded by German troops, who shoot right at them. Luckily, 4 of them manages to get away from the scene. The following day, they see a passing tank on a dirt road, and get the idea to post the scarecrow of Hitler in the middle of the crossing for the German vehicles to see. Later on, they gradually make their way towards a place to find food for their people. Roubaix and Floria immediately flee the area, followed by the other 2 members. Unfortunately, the latter 2 step on a mine, resulting in their immediate demise. Seeing the deaths of their companions, Roubaix and Floria are horrified, but they have no choice but to continue their journey. On the way, they suddenly hear the sound of a bomb falling towards them from plane. But it turns out to be just an empty drink bottle dropped from a plane. That evening, the 2 sneak into a German-occupied village. They approach a citizen's house, and point a gun at him, ordering him to surrender his cow. The man becomes terrified, and immediately brings a cow from his farm. The duo orders him to take it to the middle of the field, away from his house. And after reaching a certain distance, they ask the man to return home, leaving his cow behind. The scared man does as asked and hastily runs toward the house. This makes the duo very happy, and after walking far away, they begin to milk the cow. But then, their happiness is cut short when they are suddenly attacked by Nazi soldiers from all directions. Floria takes cover on the ground, and when the shooting subsides, he crawls toward Roubaix, and is shocked to find him dead. Miraculously, the cow is still alive, but it is trying to escape. Floria tries to reach for the rope, but then gunfire starts again, this time hitting the cow. This kills the cow, and Floria hides behind the cow's body, crying all night. The following morning, he wakes up and realizes that the area has become foggy. He tries to carry the dead cow back to the village, but is of course unable to lift it. Floria then attempts to cut the flesh, but he finds that his knife is too small, so he just leaves it and proceeds to depart. Along the way, he spots a horse and grabs it right away. Just then, we see a man with saddlebags show up, claiming that he's the owner of the horse. Floria clarifies that there is a dead cow, and he needs to take it to his villagers. Suddenly, they hear the noise of a German army heading towards their area, so the old man tells Floria to hide his rifle and take off his army uniform. He then takes Floria to his cart, and asks him to pretend to be his grandson if anyone asks. Not long after, they arrive at the old man's home, where he introduces Floria to the rest of his pretend family. Soon, a few German soldiers barge into the house and sit down at the table. The family members start serving some food, while others remain silent out of fear. The Nazis then ask everyone to gather outside the house. They claim that if people show them some documents, they will be brought to Germany and allowed to leave peacefully. Hearing this, all the townsfolk are excited and moved to show their papers. However, Floria sees through their facade, and understands that these people aren't going to be brought to Germany. He tries to warn the people that they will be killed, but no one is willing to listen to him. Here he is also disillusioned by the fact that some Russians are willing to help the Germans. Eventually, he is also forced into the group, and the people start giving their document to the army. Unfortunately, it is at this point that they realize they are one step away from death. They are abruptly led by armed men into an empty wooden church building. Once everyone gathers in the church, the doors are closed and locked from the outside. Soon after, a soldier announces that anyone who wants to leave can climb through the window, but they must leave their kids behind. Most people refuse to leave without their children, and decide they would rather die. However, Floria manages to climb out through a window, and is left alive to witness the depressing event that will occur later. Soon after, he notices a woman also climbing out of the window with her toddler, but sadly, the soldiers throw her child back inside. They drag the woman by her hair, while she screams for her baby, but the Nazis just make fun of her and laugh. They also find a Jew in the village, whom they throw inside the wooden building. The sad tragedy worsens when they begin throwing grenades into the church. They proceed with the Molotov cocktails, setting the church on fire. As the people scream inside, the German soldiers cheer and celebrate their victory. Even after burning down the whole church, they are still not satisfied, so they use guns to ensure that no one is alive. They also use flamethrowers, while Floria watches this horrific scene unfold, and is deeply traumatized. After the violent rampage, nearly the entire village is massacred, and the Nazis decide to leave. A German officer raises his gun and aims it at Floria's head, in an attempt to capture a memory photo of them. They soon leave the traumatized boy to fend off on his own. The Nazis also take the woman they had earlier dragged into the truck, and brutally assault her. Meanwhile, we see a sickly old woman lying in a bed outside. The soldiers have not killed her but left her to slowly die on her own. Afterwards, Floria moves in the same direction where the German soldiers have gone. It turns out that these Nazis had been ambushed by the partisans, resulting in many deaths. Floria continues walking and looks for his rifle, which he had hidden earlier. Moments later, he stumbles upon the young girl who had been dragged into the truck before. She looks very distressed, her legs and face covered in blood. After this, Floria meets the partisan fighters on the way, including his commander, Kosak. It turns out they have captured 11 German soldiers, including their commander. Floria looks at them with vengeance, recalling how these soldiers told the villagers to leave their children inside the church to be freed. One of the soldiers also doesn't regret his actions, and proudly admits that he indeed gave the order because children only cause trouble. He claims that some races don't have the right to exist and should be eliminated at any cost. Every person in the crowd starts demanding justice, so Cossack orders the German commander to pour gasoline on his own comrades and burn them, and then he will be released. Without hesitation, the man quickly begins pouring gasoline all over his soldiers. But before he can burn them, the partisan soldiers open fire and end up killing all the 11 Nazis. In the aftermath, Floria walks away from the scene, and he comes across a picture of Adolf Hitler in the mud. This makes him very angry, so he starts shooting at it repeatedly. As he does so, his thoughts turn to Adolf Hitler's life, which flashes before him. He wishes to end his nightmare by shooting at his picture. Before the film ends, we see a note revealing that 628 Belarusian villages, and all their people were burned to the ground during the German occupation in World War II. Okay guys, that's all the recap of Come and See 1985. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.